Tom was a young boy with a love for cars. He lived in a small town where everyone knew each other. It wasn't a fancy place. In fact, it was one of those towns where the rain seemed to come more often than the sunshine, and the streets were always muddy. Despite its modest charm, it was the place where Tom's family had lived for generations, and where his father had opened a small auto repair shop years ago. Tom spent most of his time helping out at the shop. While his friends played outside, riding bikes or hanging out at the park, Tom would be in the shop learning the ropes from his father. His father wasn't just a mechanic. He was a craftsman who took pride in every car that came through the door. For Tom, it was more than just fixing cars. It was about understanding how they worked, feeling the pulse of the engine, and learning how every piece had its place. Despite how skilled he was, Tom's family wasn't wealthy. They lived in a small, worn-out house just behind the shop. Every day his father worked tirelessly to make ends meet, and every night Tom could hear the sighs of exhaustion in his voice. But there was one thing his father always told him. If you're going to do something, do it with everything you've got. One rainy afternoon, as Tom was finishing up a job in the back of the shop, he noticed a sleek black car pull up in front, the kind of car that didn't belong in their small town. Its shiny exterior and expensive-looking design caught Tom's attention immediately. He wiped his hands on a rag and walked outside, wondering who would drive such a car into a place like this. The man who stepped out of the car was well-dressed, in a sharp suit and polished shoes. His face looked stressed, his eyes darting around as if he were searching for something. Tom approached him cautiously. "Can I help you?" Tom asked, his voice a bit unsure. The man, looking a bit flustered, glanced at Tom. "I've got a problem with my car," he said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made Tom instantly realize this wasn't just anyone. This was someone important. "It won't start, and I'm running late. I need it fixed right now." Tom felt a bit intimidated. People in suits like this didn't often come to a small-town auto repair shop like theirs. But his father always told him to treat everyone the same, no matter who they were. "I can take a look for you," Tom said, trying to sound confident. The man raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting a young boy to be the one to fix his car. "You sure? I need it fixed quickly." "I'll do my best," Tom said, giving the man a small, reassuring smile. Tom didn't wait for any more words. He opened the hood of the car, examining the engine. He could see the man's watchful gaze from behind, but Tom ignored it. He was used to working under pressure, even if this was different. The car was a luxury model, unlike anything he had worked on before, but it didn't intimidate him. Cars were cars, and they all had the same basic parts. It was just a matter of figuring out what was wrong. As the rain started to fall harder, the man moved closer to the entrance of the shop, pacing impatiently. Tom, on the other hand, was focused. He could hear the sound of his own heartbeat and the soft thud of the rain against the roof, but nothing else mattered. He had done this hundreds of times before, worked in the rain, fixed broken parts, and figured out what was wrong with a car. The problem was easy to find. A faulty fuse had caused the engine to short-circuit. It was a simple fix, but one that required patience, which Tom had in spades. His hands were soaked from the rain, but he didn't care. This was his moment to shine. As he worked, he could hear the man muttering to himself, frustration building in his voice. "How long is this going to take?" the man asked, looking over at Tom with a mix of annoyance and impatience. "I'm almost done," Tom replied calmly. He wasn't worried about the man's frustration. He was focused on fixing the problem, making sure everything was done right. A few more minutes passed, and finally Tom was done. He closed the hood and wiped his hands on a rag. The car was ready to go. The man didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, staring at the car as if he were expecting something else. Tom waited patiently. "You fixed it?" the man asked, his voice low and surprised. "Yeah," Tom replied. "It was a simple problem. Just a blown fuse. You should be good to go now." The man looked at Tom for a long moment, his eyes narrowing as if assessing him. "You did that in the rain?" he asked, finally breaking the silence. "Yeah," Tom said with a shrug. "It doesn't bother me." The man seemed to be thinking about something. Finally, he pulled out his wallet and handed Tom a generous amount of cash. "Here," he said, "for your time." Tom didn't take the money right away. He felt awkward about it. His father had always taught him that a job should be done well, not for the money, but for the pride of doing it right. But Tom knew this was the price he had agreed upon. "Thank you, sir," Tom said, taking the cash. He was about to walk away when the man stopped him. "Wait," he said, his voice thoughtful. "You're good. You remind me of someone I once knew. You ever thought about doing more than just fixing cars in a small town?" Tom blinked, not quite understanding. "What do you mean?" "I'm a CEO," the man said, his words coming slowly, almost as if he were weighing them carefully. "I know a thing or two about the car industry. You've got a talent. I can help you." Tom didn't know what to say. His mind was racing. He had always dreamed of something bigger than this, but who was he to be offered such a chance? He was just a kid from a small town. "I don't know what you mean," Tom said, shaking his head, unsure of what the man was getting at. The man smiled slightly. "I think you do. I think you're capable of a lot more than this. Come by my office sometime. We can talk, if you want." Before Tom could say another word, the man turned and got into his car. The engine roared to life and the car sped off into the rain, leaving Tom standing there in the downpour. Unsure of what just happened, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that something had just changed. He didn't know it yet, but that rainy afternoon was about to be the turning point of his life. The next day, Tom couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The man, who was now a stranger in his mind, had offered him an opportunity that seemed too good to be true. The man had been serious, there was no doubt about that. His words echoed in Tom's mind, and with every passing hour they became harder to ignore. "Come by my office sometime. We can talk." What did that even mean? Was the man really offering him something? Or was he just another person passing through the town, trying to get through the rain in his day without really paying attention? Tom walked back into the auto shop the next morning, and his father was already there, tinkering with an old engine. It was quiet, the sound of raindrops hitting the roof like a constant hum. The weather seemed to match Tom's mood, heavy, uncertain, and a little bit cold. "Morning, Dad," Tom said, trying to sound casual, even though his mind was racing. His father didn't look up right away. He had a way of being lost in his work, his hands moving with practiced ease, his focus on the engine in front of him. "Morning, son. Got a lot of work to do today," his father said, wiping his hands on a rag before turning to face Tom. "How's everything going?" Tom hesitated. He didn't know how to explain what had happened the day before. The whole thing felt surreal. "I met a man yesterday," Tom began slowly. "He came in with a fancy car and I fixed it for him. It was a simple thing, just a fuse, and he gave me money, but then he said something strange." His father raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "What did he say?" Tom hesitated for a moment, unsure how to put it into words. "He offered to help me. He's a CEO. He said I have a talent for cars and I should do more than just fixing them here." His father stopped for a moment, his face thoughtful. The quiet hum of the shop seemed to grow louder in the silence that followed. "A CEO, you say?" his father finally asked, sounding a little skeptical. "What do you think he meant by that?" "I don't know," Tom admitted. "But he told me to come by his office sometime. He said we could talk." His father stared at him for a long moment. Then he shrugged. "It sounds like a big opportunity, son. But I want you to be careful. Not everyone who comes around here with an offer has good intentions." Tom nodded, understanding his father's concern. The small town didn't get much attention, and outsiders weren't often seen in a good light. But something about the way the man had spoken made Tom feel like this wasn't just an empty promise. "I'll go see him," Tom said finally, a bit more sure of himself. "But I'll be careful." His father smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've always been good with your hands, Tom, but don't let anyone take advantage of you. Remember where you come from." Tom felt a surge of determination. His father's words were always honest, but there was something in the way he said them this time that made Tom feel like he was ready for whatever came next. The thought of leaving the small town, of going somewhere bigger, was both exciting and terrifying. But the chance to learn more, to do more, felt like something Tom couldn't ignore. After breakfast, Tom decided to go. He left the shop and started walking down the road, the sound of his boots on the wet pavement echoing in the quiet. The air was still heavy with rain, and the world around him felt damp and gray. As he walked, he kept thinking about the man's car, the way it had gleamed in the rain, the smooth lines, the kind of car that Tom had only ever seen in magazines or on TV. He arrived at the office building an hour later, a tall, glassy structure that seemed out of place in the small town. The building was sleek and modern, its windows reflecting the gray sky. Tom felt out of place just standing in front of it, his worn jacket and boots making him feel like he didn't belong. Taking a deep breath, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The lobby was bright with polished floors and sleek furniture. Tom felt his stomach churn with nervousness, but he pressed on. He approached the receptionist, a woman who looked up at him with an unamused expression. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice flat. "I'm here to see Mr. Harper," Tom said, trying to sound confident. The receptionist's expression didn't change, but she typed something into her computer and nodded. "He's expecting you. Go on up to the 3rd floor." Tom thanked her and made his way to the elevator. As the doors closed and the elevator started moving, he couldn't help but feel a knot tighten in his stomach. What was he doing here? He was just a mechanic's son, and this was a whole different world. The elevator seemed to move too slowly, and every second felt like an eternity. When the doors finally opened on the 3rd floor, Tom stepped out into a hallway lined with offices. He walked down the corridor, trying to ignore the feeling that he was being watched. At the end of the hall, he found an office door with a plaque that read, "Richard Harper, CEO." Taking another deep breath, he knocked. "Come in," a voice called from inside. Tom pushed open the door and stepped inside. Richard Harper was sitting behind a large desk, his suit neatly pressed, his face calm but focused. He looked up when Tom entered, his expression softening slightly. "You came," Richard said, standing up and extending his hand. "I'm glad to see you." Tom shook his hand, still feeling nervous. "I wasn't sure if I should come, but you said we could talk." "Of course," Richard said, gesturing for Tom to sit down. "I wanted to get to know you better." "You impressed me yesterday." Tom sat down, trying to relax. "I just did my job." "It wasn't anything special." Richard smiled, leaning back in his chair. "No, it was. The way you worked, the way you handled the car, the attention to detail. It's not something I see every day. You've got a gift, Tom, and I think you could do more with it." Tom felt a spark of excitement but also confusion. "What do you mean?" "I'm just a mechanic," Richard nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "You are. But I think you have the potential to do something bigger, something that could change your life. The automotive industry is always evolving, and people like you, people with the talent and the drive, don't come around often." Tom didn't know what to say. He had always wanted more, but had never considered that someone like Richard would offer him a chance to step outside the small town he had grown up in. Richard continued, "I want to help you. I can get you the training, the connections you need. But first you have to decide if you're willing to take the leap, if you want to leave everything you know behind." Tom's mind raced. It felt like a dream, one he hadn't dared to imagine until now. But was he ready? Was he ready to leave the life he knew for something completely unknown? He looked at Richard, then down at his hands, the same hands that had fixed cars for years. They were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from anticipation. He had worked so hard for this moment without even realizing it. "I don't know if I'm ready," Tom admitted, "but I want to try." Richard smiled. "Good. That's all I need to hear. The rest we can work on together." Tom's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts as he left Richard's office. The offer was real. It wasn't just some empty promise or passing comment. Richard was serious. The CEO of a large company was offering to help him, to take him from the small-town mechanic shop and put him in a whole new world. It felt like a dream, something too big to grasp all at once. But the more Tom thought about it, the more he realized this could be his chance. A chance to get out of the life he had known and do something bigger, something important. The question was, could he actually take the leap? As he walked back to the auto shop, his steps slow and hesitant, he couldn't stop thinking about the life ahead of him. The small shop, the quiet town, his father's worn hands. Was he ready to leave all of that behind? He had never known anything else, and the thought of going somewhere new was both terrifying and exciting. When Tom got back to the shop, his father was still working on the same engine. The sound of the wrench turning echoed in the quiet space. Tom stood in the doorway for a moment, watching his father work. He didn't want to disturb him, but he knew he had to talk. "Dad?" Tom's voice was tentative. His father looked up, wiping his hands on his shirt before pushing his glasses back up the bridge of his nose. "What's on your mind, son?" Tom hesitated before walking over to where his father was working. He took a deep breath.
I've been thinking about what Mr. Harper said.
He wants to help me, Dad. He wants to train me, give me a chance to work in the automotive industry in a bigger way. His father's hands froze for a moment, then slowly relaxed. Is that so? He asked quietly, his voice giving nothing away. Yeah, Tom said, his heart racing. He said he sees potential in me. He thinks I could do more than just fix cars in this shop. His father leaned back, taking a moment to process what Tom had said. Tom's nerves were starting to get the best of him. This was big. It wasn't just a job offer. It was a whole new path. What do you think? Tom asked. What should I do? His father didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood up and wiped his hands on his pants, his expression unreadable. I think it's a big step, Tom, he said slowly. Bigger than anything we've talked about before. You know what it takes to succeed in this world, and it's not always easy, but I can see why he'd want to help you. You've got skills, son, and I've always believed you could do more than just stay here. Tom felt a wave of relief wash over him. His father was supportive, but it wasn't a decision to make lightly. It wasn't just about leaving the shop. It was about leaving everything he had known behind. You don't think I'm making a mistake? Tom asked, his voice full of doubt. No, his father said, shaking his head. I don't think you're making a mistake. But I want you to be sure, son. Once you leave, there's no going back. You've got to be ready for it, Tom thought about that. His father was right. Once he took that first step, everything would change. And he wasn't sure if he was ready for it. I don't know if I am ready, Tom admitted. But what if I never get another chance like this? What if this is the only opportunity I have to make something of myself? His father smiled gently, the kind of smile that only came from years of hard work and wisdom. Then you take it, son. You take it with both hands. Tom nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. He knew this was the right decision. This was his chance to change his life. But he also knew that it would come with sacrifices. The life he had grown up with would never be the same. The next day, Tom returned to Richard's office. He walked into the building with a sense of purpose, his heart pounding in his chest. He had made his decision. Richard greeted him with a warm smile when he entered. Tom, he said, shaking his hand, I'm glad to see you again. So what do you think? Tom took a deep breath. I think I'm ready. I want to do this. I want to take the chance. Richard's smile widened. That's the spirit, he said. I knew you'd come around. You've got a lot of work ahead of you, but I'll be with you every step of the way. We'll start with training, and I'll introduce you to some people in the industry. It's not going to be easy, but I have no doubt you've got what it takes. Tom felt a surge of excitement. This was it, the start of something new. The opportunity he had dreamed about, but deep down he knew it wasn't going to be easy. The world Richard was offering him was a far cry from the small shop he had known. It was bigger, faster, and more competitive, and he would have to prove himself every step of the way. As the weeks passed, Tom found himself immersed in the world Richard had opened up to him. He spent his days studying automotive engineering, learning about the latest technologies and working with some of the brightest minds in the industry. Richard introduced him to people who could help him along the way, from engineers to designers to business leaders. But it wasn't all easy. Tom struggled at first. The concepts were more complex than anything he had learned back at the small-town shop. He had always relied on his hands, his instincts, and his ability to think on the fly. But here he was learning to think in a whole new way, more methodically, more strategically. There were days when Tom doubted himself. He missed the simplicity of his old life, the comfort of working on cars with his father in the quiet shop. But every time he felt overwhelmed, he thought back to his father's words. You take it with both hands. And so Tom did. He threw himself into the work, even when it felt like too much. He spent long hours in the workshop, learning everything he could, asking questions, and absorbing everything he was being taught. He knew that this opportunity was a once-in-a-lifetime chance, and he wasn't about to let it slip away. One afternoon, Richard asked Tom to come into his office. We've got a big project coming up, he said. I want you to be a part of it. It's a design challenge, something that could change the way we look at car technology. It's going to be tough, but I believe you're ready for it. Tom felt a rush of excitement. This was his chance to prove himself, to show Richard and everyone else that he belonged in this world. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was ready. He had come too far to turn back now. The pressure was starting to mount, but Tom had always been good under pressure. Every time he hit a roadblock, he would push himself harder, determined to find a way around it. But this time it felt different. The stakes were higher. This was no longer just about fixing cars in a small-town shop. It was about creating something new, something innovative that could change the way people thought about the automotive world. The project Richard had given him was challenging, to say the least. It wasn't just about engineering. It was about creativity, vision, and pushing boundaries. Tom had to design a car feature that could improve efficiency while still looking sleek and stylish. He had been working day and night on it, bouncing ideas off Richard and other engineers in the company, but nothing seemed to click. Every design felt incomplete. Every solution felt like a compromise. One evening, as he sat hunched over a drawing board in the company's design studio, frustration threatened to take over. He had been staring at the same sketch for hours, but something was missing. His hands were tired, his eyes sore, and his mind felt like it was running in circles. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes for a moment. The quiet hum of the office was almost comforting, but it couldn't drown out the weight of his thoughts. He missed his father. He missed the simple days in the shop when it was just him and his dad, working on cars without the pressure of deadlines or the weight of a corporate world. He had barely realized how much he longed for those days until now. Back then, the only challenge was figuring out how to fix a broken part. Now he was expected to come up with something groundbreaking. It felt overwhelming. Tom pushed himself up from the chair and walked to the window. The city outside was lit up, the lights reflecting off the rain-soaked streets. It was beautiful in a way, but also a stark reminder of how far he had come from the small town he had grown up in. The thought of going back home, of escaping the pressure, crept into his mind. But then he remembered his father's words. Once you leave, there's no going back. Tom wasn't the kind of person to quit. He knew that he had to push through even if it felt impossible. So he went back to the drawing board, determined to finish what he had started. The next day, Richard called him into his office. Tom had been working late into the night, but he could see that Richard had a serious look on his face. Richard was standing by the window when Tom walked in, his arms crossed as he looked out at the skyline. "Tom," Richard said, turning around, "I've been looking at your designs and I know you've been working hard, but I can tell you're struggling." Tom hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, it's been tough. I can't seem to get it right." Richard studied him for a moment before speaking again. "Listen, I get it. This is a big project and I know it feels like everything is riding on it. But the truth is you're overthinking it. You're so focused on getting it perfect that you're missing the bigger picture." Tom frowned. "What do you mean?" Richard walked over to his desk and pulled out a sketch from a drawer. "Take a look at this," he said, handing it to Tom. It was a simple design, nothing fancy, but there was something about it that caught Tom's attention. It wasn't about perfection. It was about practicality and simplicity. "This is the kind of design I'm talking about," Richard continued. "Sometimes the best solutions are the simplest ones. You don't have to create something that blows everyone's mind. Just create something that works. Something that makes sense." Tom stared at the sketch, feeling a wave of clarity wash over him. He had been so caught up in trying to create something revolutionary that he had forgotten the most important thing. A good design wasn't about being flashy. It was about solving a problem. Richard smiled when he saw the change in Tom's expression. "Now take a step back, breathe, and look at your designs with fresh eyes. You'll see the solution is right there in front of you." Tom nodded, a sense of relief settling in. He wasn't in this alone. Richard wasn't just a CEO. He was a mentor, someone who understood the challenges and knew how to guide Tom through them. The next few days were a whirlwind of new ideas and breakthroughs. Tom refocused, taking Richard's advice to heart. He spent hours tweaking his designs, making small changes here and there, and slowly but surely the pieces began to fall into place. The final design was nothing like he had originally imagined, but in its simplicity, it was perfect. It solved the problem, and it looked good doing it. Tom presented the new design to Richard, who was impressed. "This is it," he said, his eyes lighting up. "This is the one we've been waiting for." Tom felt a sense of pride swell inside him. This wasn't just a project anymore. This was his first real contribution to something big, and he had done it. But even as Tom celebrated his success, he knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. The automotive world was competitive, and there were always new challenges on the horizon.
He had proven to himself that he could handle the pressure, but the real test was still to come. In the weeks that followed, Tom's design was presented to the higher-ups in the company.
It was met with praise, and soon enough it was put into production. Tom's hard work had paid off. He had moved from the small-town mechanic's son to a key player in a major company, and he was just getting started. But despite the accolades and the new opportunities, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. He had achieved success, but it didn't feel like the final destination. There was still a part of him that longed for the simplicity of his old life. The days when he worked alongside his father, fixing cars in the quiet shop. As he stood in the company's sleek office looking out over the city skyline, Tom realized that success wasn't just about where you ended up. It was about the journey. And for all the achievements and advancements he had made, he had to remember where he came from. Tom wasn't ready to give up on his dreams of doing something bigger. But he also knew that he couldn't forget the roots that had shaped him. The small town, his father's shop, the lessons he had learned. Those things would always be a part of him. They were what made him who he was. And with that realization, Tom made a promise to himself. No matter where his career took him, he would always remember the value of hard work, of integrity, and of the importance of staying grounded. He wasn't just going to change the automotive industry. He was going to change himself along the way. Months passed, and Tom's life in the corporate world continued to evolve. He had transitioned from a small-town mechanic's son to a key figure in the automotive company. But despite his growing success, a part of him still felt disconnected. He loved the work he was doing, but something about the hustle of city life made him miss the simplicity and peace of his old life. The first few months after the success of his design had been a whirlwind. Tom was often traveling, meeting with clients, attending meetings, and working on new projects. But as exciting as it was also exhausting. The work was never ending, and there were always more challenges to face. Still, Tom was determined to rise to every occasion. He had come too far to back down now. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings, Tom found himself in his apartment, sitting on the balcony and staring out at the skyline. The city was alive with lights, but to Tom it felt a little too loud, a little too distant. The noise of the city wasn't the kind that stirred excitement. It was the kind that made you feel small, as though you were just another face in a crowd of millions. But as he sat there, thinking about his journey so far, something became clear to him. He had spent so much time chasing success and trying to prove himself in this new world that he had almost forgotten why he started. It wasn't about the fame, the recognition, or the awards. It was about doing something meaningful, something that had a real impact on people's lives. That was when he realized what he needed to do. He had to go back home. He hadn't been back to his small town in months. In all the hustle of city life and corporate success, he had neglected the one thing that had shaped him, his roots. It was time to return, not just for a visit, but with a purpose. Tom wanted to give back to the community that had given him so much. He wanted to bring the skills he had learned back home and use them to help the people who had helped raise him. The next morning, Tom booked a flight back to his hometown. As the plane soared through the clouds, he couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. It had been so long since he had seen his father's shop, the place where it all began. He wondered how things had changed and if his father was still working as hard as ever. When Tom arrived, he made his way straight to the shop. The familiar smell of oil and grease filled the air as he pushed open the door. His father was bent over a car, working with the same focused determination Tom remembered so well. "Dad?" Tom called, his voice filled with warmth and nostalgia. His father looked up and his face broke into a smile. "Tom, I wasn't expecting you."
"What are you doing here?"
Tom smiled back, walking over to his father. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about how far I've come, and I realize there's something I need to do." His father wiped his hands on a rag and looked at him curiously. "What's that?" "I want to help," Tom said. "I've learned so much. I've had the chance to do things I never thought I could, and I've met incredible people, but I think it's time I bring some of that back here." His father's eyes softened. "What do you mean?" "I want to help you with the shop," Tom explained. "I know we've been small and we've always just gotten by, but we can do more. I want to bring in new equipment, new ideas, maybe even hire a couple more people. We can turn this place into something bigger, something that can serve the community in ways we never thought possible." For a moment, his father didn't say anything. He just looked at Tom as if trying to understand what he was saying. Then slowly a smile spread across his face. "You want to make it bigger?" his father asked, his voice full of disbelief but also pride. "Yeah," Tom said, his voice steady. "I want to make sure this place can continue, not just for us but for the people who need it. People like us. People who work hard but never get the chance to really shine." His father let out a slow breath, clearly moved. "I don't know what to say, son. This is big, but if you think it's possible, if you really want to do this—" "I do," Tom said, his voice firm. "I've learned so much and I want to bring it all back here. I want to make sure the next generation has the chance to succeed just like I did." His father nodded slowly. "All right, Tom, let's do it. Let's make this place something more than it ever was." And just like that, Tom's plan began to take shape. The days that followed were filled with excitement and hard work. Tom used the knowledge he had gained in the city to improve the shop, introducing new tools and techniques that would make the work more efficient. He even hired a few local people, giving them the opportunity to learn and grow, just like he had. It wasn't easy, of course. There were plenty of challenges along the way. The shop had to adjust to the new technology, and there were plenty of moments where it seemed like the project might not work. But Tom's determination kept him going. He had seen firsthand how hard work and dedication could change lives, and he was ready to make that happen for others. As the months passed, the shop began to transform. It wasn't just a place where cars were repaired. It became a hub for innovation and opportunity. People from the town started coming in, asking about the new services Tom was offering. They were excited to see the changes, and even more excited to see someone like Tom coming back to give back. One afternoon, as Tom and his father sat in the office looking over the new plans for the shop, his father turned to him with a proud smile. "You did it, Tom," his father said. "You really did it." Tom smiled back, but this time it wasn't just about him. It was about everyone who had helped him along the way, from his father to the community to the people who had believed in him. He had done it, but he had done it with the support of everyone who had been there for him. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad," Tom said. "You taught me everything I know." His father chuckled, shaking his head. "No, son, you did it. You made the decision, and you took that leap." Tom knew his father was right. He had taken the leap, but it wasn't just a leap for himself. It was a leap for the whole town, for everyone who had ever felt stuck or trapped in their circumstances. Tom had proven that with hard work, determination, and the right support, anyone could change their life. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the shop, Tom felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. He had come full circle, from the mechanic's son to a leader in his community, and now he was helping others reach their potential. For the first time in a long while, Tom felt like he had finally found his place. And as he looked at the shop, he knew that this was only the beginning. There was still so much more to do, so much more to achieve. But now with his father by his side and a whole community behind him, he was ready for whatever came next. Months passed, and the shop continued to thrive. The changes Tom had made had transformed it into a buzzing hub of activity. People from all over the town and beyond had started coming in, not only for repairs but also for the chance to learn something new. Tom had created an environment where people felt empowered, where they could work on cars, learn the tricks of the trade, and build a future for themselves just as he had done. It wasn't just about fixing engines anymore. It was about creating opportunities. For Tom, that was the real reward. He had learned that success wasn't just measured by what you could achieve for yourself, but by what you could offer others. And he had found a way to give back to the community that had raised him. But even as the shop flourished, Tom couldn't help but feel a sense of restlessness. Something was missing, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. His work had become more fulfilling than ever, but a part of him still felt drawn to the larger world. He had stepped away from the corporate life, but he realized that there was still so much to learn, so much to do, and a part of him wondered if he had made the right choice staying behind. It was during a quiet evening, as Tom sat alone in the shop after hours, that Richard, the CEO who had mentored him in the past, called. "Tom," Richard said, his voice coming through the speakerphone, "I've been hearing great things about what you've been doing with the shop. It's impressive, but I think there's more you could do. Tom paused, the sound of the engine running softly in the background. What do you mean?
I mean, Richard continued, you've got something special.
And I think it's time you take it to the next level. There are opportunities out there, Tom, bigger ones than you've seen so far. I want to offer you a chance to work with me again. This time on a larger project. It could change everything. Tom's heart raced, the familiar pull of ambition stirring inside him. The idea of stepping back into the world he had left behind was tempting, but at the same time it filled him with uncertainty. He had found a place here, a purpose, and it wasn't clear whether returning to the fast-paced world of big projects was the right move. I don't know. Richard, Tom said honestly, his voice wavering slightly. I've built something here and it feels right. I'm helping people. I'm doing something meaningful. Richard's tone softened. I understand. But sometimes the most meaningful work comes from taking risks, from pushing yourself into the unknown. I won't pressure you, Tom. I just want you to know that the door is open. Tom sat back in his chair, staring out at the empty streets of the town. The lights of the shop glowed faintly in the distance, and for a moment, he could almost hear the voices of the people who had come through the doors, people whose lives had been touched by the work he had done. He had built this place from the ground up, and it had become more than just a shop. It was a home for people to learn, grow, and thrive. But Richard's words lingered in his mind. Could he do more? Could he take what he had learned and apply it on a larger scale, to help more people in a bigger way? Could he balance the drive for success with his desire to give back? The next morning, Tom woke up early, the sun barely rising above the horizon. He had always been an early riser, a habit that came from years of working in the shop with his father. But today there was a heaviness in his chest that he couldn't shake. He had always followed his instincts, but now his instincts were torn in two different directions. After breakfast, Tom sat down with his father, who was reading the newspaper at the kitchen table. His father looked up as Tom sat down opposite him, sensing the unease in his son's posture. "What's on your mind, son?" his father asked, setting the paper down. Tom hesitated before speaking. Richard called. "He wants me to come back, to work on a bigger project. It could change everything." His father studied him carefully. "And what do you think?" "I don't know," Tom admitted. "Part of me feels like I should stay here, keep growing the shop, keep helping people. But another part of me wonders if there's more I could do, if I could help more people in a bigger way." His father didn't respond right away. Instead, he took a long sip of his coffee, clearly thinking about Tom's words. Finally, he spoke. "You've done a lot for this town, Tom. You've made a difference here. But I also know you. I know how you think. If you feel like there's more to be done, if you feel like this is something you need to pursue, then you have to do it. But just remember that no matter where you go or what you do, this place, these people, this will always be your foundation." Tom nodded, grateful for his father's wisdom. "I know, I just don't want to lose what I've built here." "You won't," his father said, smiling. "You'll carry it with you wherever you go." The conversation lingered in Tom's mind as he spent the rest of the day working in the shop. He could feel the weight of his decision growing heavier with each passing hour. It wasn't just about the job or the opportunity. It was about his purpose, his legacy. Tom had built something real here, something that had changed lives. But could he build something even bigger? As the sun began to set, Tom found himself standing in front of the shop, looking at the building he had spent so many years working on. The shop was more than just a business to him. It was his heart, his soul. It had taught him everything he knew, and it had become a symbol of his journey. He thought back to his early days working with his father in the small shop, learning the ropes, and figuring out how to fix cars. It had been hard work, but it had been honest work, and it had taught him the value of perseverance, the importance of giving your best no matter what. But he also knew that life had a way of pushing you forward, of challenging you to grow, to evolve. Tom couldn't ignore the opportunity in front of him. The chance to make a bigger impact, to help more people, was something he couldn't pass up. That night, after hours of thinking and reflecting, Tom picked up the phone and dialed Richard's number. "I'm in," Tom said when Richard answered. "I'm ready to take on the project." Richard's voice was filled with excitement. "That's great news, Tom. I knew you'd come around. You won't regret it." Tom smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that he was ready for it. The journey wasn't over yet. It was only just beginning. As he hung up the phone, Tom stood up and walked out into the night. The shop was quiet now, the lights dimmed, but he could feel the energy of the place. It was alive with the memories of everything he had built, everything he had worked for, and with that, Tom made a vow to himself. He would continue to grow, to learn and to help others no matter where life took him, because he knew that success wasn't just about the destination, it was about the journey and the people you met along the way.